He is the creator, executive producer, and writer for Boardwalk Empire, and an executive producer and writer for The Sopranos. Please welcome the Television Academy's governor for the Writers' Peer Group, Mr. Terence Winter.
Thank you, thank you. How incredibly lucky are we to be able to tell stories for a living, to make people laugh, to make people cry, to make people think. In the best case, to inspire people to action. In some cases, to lead people to lives of crime, or in my case, to writing about crime. In 1970, they ran the movie Oliver on TV in New York, in Brooklyn, where I grew up, and it blew me away. I wanted to be part of that gang. I wanted to be specifically the Artful Dodger. How cool is that? A year later, The Sting ran. Paul Newman as a con man. How awesome would it be to be able to use your wits to get people to do what you want? Then there was The Godfather. That was a little different. Then in real life, when I was 14 years old, I got a job in a butcher shop in Brooklyn owned by Paul Castellano, the head of the Gambino crime family. That's where my real education about crime writing started, and I kind of learned by osmosis how people like Tony Soprano acted, thought, talked, and behaved. And you coupled that with WPIX in New York for people who lived there, and they ran every Warner Brothers gangster movie, Public Enemy. I got to know James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart, and this was my intro into crime writing and loving movies and loving TV. Like most of you guys, I probably logged 1 billion hours of TV by the time I was 11 or 12 years old. But then the idea of working in the industry was something that was kind of in there. But, you know, in Brooklyn and New York in the 60s and 70s, there was no production. There was nobody you knew who worked in television. That was something so foreign and something somebody else did. In my neighborhood, you grew up to be a cop, a fireman. In my case, I went to a high school where I studied to be an auto mechanic. I knew I didn't want to do that. The only thing I really knew is I wanted to be rich. And the only two jobs I knew that could get me there were doctor and lawyer. Well, doctor was out, but I had watched a lot of episodes of Perry Mason. And I also knew I was a pretty good bullshit artist. And I thought, you know what, I can do that. So I set upon the path of maybe trying to make that happen. I stumbled onto the campus of NYU when I was 19 after a failed bid at the delicatessen business. And this is after coming out of automotive high school. And I had never even taken the SATs. All I heard was NYU was vaguely a good school. So I went into the office, and it was very clear that with my vast knowledge of auto mechanics, I was not going to get into New York University. But I remembered this thing, and I was sort of a natural con man. So I got the brochure, and I said, let me find the most obscure major they offer, and I'll eliminate my competition. So in 1980, when I was 19, NYU offered a major in medieval religion. And I said, this is for me. So I applied, and I got a call from a guy a couple of weeks later, and he said, so let me get this straight. You're from Brooklyn, you have an auto mechanics license, and you want to study medieval religion. How did that happen? I said, well, I'm very religious, first of all. And secondly, I've always been fascinated with the Knights of the Round Table, which was the only medieval thing I knew. So lo and behold, I was accepted to NYU. And this sounds incredibly naive. I swear to God, I did not know that NYU, one of the premier colleges in the world that teach film and TV, I didn't know that was even a major. That's how far off the radar this business was at that time. So I worked my way through school, again, thinking maybe I'd vaguely be a lawyer. I worked nights. I went to school during the day. I get to law school. I work nights, go to school during the day. Actually, no, I'm sorry. I went to school at night, worked during the day. Finally, I graduate. I'm about to graduate, and one of my roommates says to me, if you could do anything in the world, anything, what would it be? Now, you would hope that somebody in law school, the answer would be a lawyer. And I said, well, I don't know, I guess I'd be like a writer for David Letterman or something. And he said, no, something realistic. And I remember thinking to myself, this isn't even a realistic fantasy. It's so crazy. I said, just any notions I had to do in this just got put aside. So I got a job in a law firm, passed the New York bar, huge Manhattan law firm. I was 27 years old, making a really good living, and absolutely hated it from day one. Literally the first week, I was sneaking out during the day, going to movies, telling my assistant I had to go to court. I was in bookstores, doing everything but the work I was supposed to do. And I just hated it. But I thought, you know what, everybody hates their job. That's why they call it work. And the way I anesthetized myself from this shitty existence was I would go out every night, and I'd party and drink and go to dinners and nightclubs and dates and stuff. And that's sort of, I figured, how you do it. fall of 1988, beautiful autumn night, I take a date to Michael's Pub, this really cool jazz club in the city, to see Mel Torme. And it's Mel Torme and a three-piece band. And the night's going great, and Mel's killing it, and I gave the guy $20, and we sat right down stage, and I'm right there. I could practically sing a duet with Mel. It's going great, and then Mel Torme completely screwed my night up. Screwed my life up. And the way he did this was he said, I'd like to acknowledge a friend of mine sitting out in the audience tonight, a man whose work you know very well. He created MASH. He wrote on Caesar's Hour, wrote the movie Tootsie. Funny thing happened on the way to the forum, ladies and gentlemen, Larry Gelbart. And Larry Gelbart was sitting at the next table. Now, Larry Gelbart could have bitten me in the ankle. I wouldn't have known who he was, but I absolutely knew his work. And the whole night, I sat there thinking, God, the fantasy about being a writer is now reality. This is a real person. This is a guy who's doing it. So if the whole idea of me thinking, oh, this is something somebody else does, well, that's the somebody else. He's right there. So the whole night I was looking at him. I introduced myself. He couldn't have been nicer. And that's the night I decided, you know what? I'm doing this. So I decided I'm going to quit my legal job. My friends in Brooklyn were dubious, to say the least. They said, all right, let me get this straight. You grow up, you go to automotive high school, you graduate, first person in your family to go to college. You graduate from NYU. Unbelievable. You get to law school. You graduate. You pass the New York bar and the Connecticut bar. I left that out. You get a job offer. You're on partnership track at a major Manhattan law firm. You're going to quit that to move to Los Angeles, where you've never been, to write scripts. And, dude, you have never written a fucking script. I said, I know. I thank you. But this is absolutely the right thing. And they said, you're crazy. You're going to be back here in 6 months. I said, I don't think so. I showed up here in 1991. It was like I parachuted out of a plane. I didn't know a soul, but I lived like a monk. I got a share in an apartment. I took my law degree off my resume and got a job as a paralegal because I knew I would need to work at night, and working as a lawyer was too much. Actually, I worked for Unical, the oil company, as a paralegal, and they had no idea that I was actually a lawyer. My boss thought I was the smartest paralegal who ever lived. And it's interesting, like, obviously it's illegal to say you're a lawyer if you're not a lawyer, but I could never find any case law that said you have to divulge the fact that you're a lawyer, because nobody ever does that, but I was doing it. So like once a month he'd say, you should go to law school. I go, I'm not really a good student. So anyway, I'm plugging away, and I'm teaching myself how to be a sitcom writer. I thought, okay, I could write a 30-minute script, and I watched 1,000,000 hours of The Munsters and F Troop. I think I got this. So I started writing, and people were reading my scripts, and I was getting really good responses, but people said, you need an agent. And I said, well, how do you get an agent? And they said, well, nobody knows. Then that's the catch-22 in Hollywood, is you can't get a job without an agent. You can't get an agent without a job. I said, well, how the fuck does anybody ever do anything? And they said, again, nobody knows. If you told me you wanted to be a dentist, I could tell you exactly what to do. But to be a writer or an actor, no one knows. So I would cold call agents and go and schmooze and network, and I could never get anywhere. And it was driving me crazy. And I thought, God, this is the final irony of my life. I've been able to scam my way into everything I ever wanted, and the one thing I really want, I can't get into. I have to do something. So I went down to the Writers Guild. Writers Guild has a list of agents who will take unsolicited scripts. Now, normally, if you send a script to CAA or William Morris, it'll come back unopened if they didn't ask you to send it. But this is a list of people like young agents and new agencies who actually want new clients. And just by sheer coincidence, on this list is a guy named Doug Viviani. Doug Viviani sat 4 seats away from me throughout law school. I was like, this is unbelievable. I called Doug in New York. He's in Long Island. I said, what are you doing? You're an agent? And he said, no, I'm a real estate lawyer, but I had a client who wrote a book on real estate, and I used my fee to get bonded as an agent, but I don't know anything about being an agent. I said, you sound perfect. You're my agent. I said, that's great. He said, all right. I said, I'm in Hollywood. I'm trying to do this. I said, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to create the Doug Viviani Agency. I'm going to go down the mailboxes, et cetera, and I'm going to get like Suite 305, which is actually a mailbox, and I'm going to get letterhead, and I'm going to get a voicemail system, and I'm going to pay for everything. I'm going to submit my work, and if we get anything, I'll give you 10% like a real agent. So he said, all right, just don't do anything too stupid. I said, too late, but anyway, I'm going to do that. So this was back in the days when you could do this. This was like 1994. So I photocopied all my scripts. I hit every single sitcom office in LA, and this was like, there were like 30 of them. This is back in the days with TGIF. Remember, like Full House and Family Matters. There's like tons of those shows. So I would pull onto the lot, like Warner Brothers, for example, and I'd have a baseball hat on. And I'd say, yeah, hi, I'm the messenger from the Doug Viviani Agency. I have some scripts. They go, oh, okay, go ahead. And they'd wave you onto the lot. So I would just walk into every office and say to the kid behind the desk, yeah, I have some scripts from the Doug Viviani Agency. There's those scripts you wanted. And they'd be like, okay, great. So at least theoretically, my scripts were now in a building from a quote, sort of semi-legitimate agent, in a building where people who, if lightning struck and they read it and they liked it, they could hire me and I could get something. So a couple of weeks went by and I get a call. It's a Friday, and the Doug Viviani voicemail has its first message. And this is a woman. She says, hi, Doug. My name's Winifred Hervey Stallworth. I'm the executive producer of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I read Terry Winter's scripts. I think he's really talented. I'd like to talk to you. I went, holy shit, unbelievable. It's working. So I called Doug in New York, and being Friday, and it's 4:30 in L.A., it's 7:30 in New York. He's gone for the weekend. So I can't believe it. I got to wait. Got to wait till Monday. And then it occurred to me, he doesn't know anything about being an agent. Why do I have to wait for him? I can just be him. And this way I don't have to wait for him to say, how does she sound? So my only exposure to an agent was Reuben Kincaid from the Partridge Family, who didn't really look like he did a lot. So that was really all I had to go on. But I said, I'm going to wing this. So I called her up and I said, yeah, hi, it's Doug Viviani. And she said, yeah, hi, Doug. Read Terry's scripts. He's really talented. I said, oh, he's amazing. And she said, I don't know if you know the show. Fresh Prince is sort of a teenage-oriented show. Does he have one more spec that's kind of teenagey? I think I had given her a Seinfeld and a Frasier, and I don't remember what else. But I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, Terry just finished an incredible episode of The Wonder Years, which I think would be perfect. I said, but the problem is he's away at his beach house for the weekend. So she said, oh, okay. I said, can I get it to you? And of course, I'm lying. I did not have a Wonder-Year script, and I'm calculating how long is it going to take me to write one. And I went, can I get it to you on Tuesday, very late afternoon? She said, yep, fine. I said, okay, great. I hung up. And this is amazing how, it's not really all that long ago, but how much the world has changed. This was pre-internet. I had to get in my car, drive to Hollywood Boulevard, and buy a Wonder-Year script from some guy who, remember they would sell them on tables for $5, because I needed to see how a Wonder-Year script was formatted. So anyway, long story short, too late. I cranked out a Wonder-Year script from Friday night until Tuesday, and then Tuesday afternoon I threw the baseball hat back on, and now I had to be the messenger from the Doug Viviani Agency, also Doug Viviani, also me. Ran in, flung it in the door, and came back out. Anyway, they had me in to pitch a story, and I pitched a bunch of stories, and they bought one, and that day became the first thing I ever did. That started me onto the road to my career. As it turns out, the story I seldom never got made, but it was my first foot in the door, and it led to other things, the rest of my life. Two of the people in that room, a writing team who went on to take on a show later on, hired me a couple of years later, and it was just, that meeting was everything. Anyway, cut to 2008. I just wrap up on The Sopranos. It's 20 years exactly from the year I went to see Mel Torme. And I win a really prestigious writing award. It's the Penn USA Writing Award. And on the evening, thank you. Very prestigious. On the evening, on the win, there's another guy getting a Lifetime Achievement Award. And that week in Variety, there's a full-page ad taken by CAA that says, Creative Artists Agency would like to congratulate their clients, Terence Winter and Larry Gelbart, on the Penn USA Award. So I told this story that night, and I met Larry again. I reintroduced myself, and he remembered seeing Mel Torme. He had no idea who I was, but it doesn't matter because I sure as hell know who he was, and that night changed my life. Thank you.